asked for a video about the viscosity, how we measure it, what does it mean, and how we can manipulate it. In an emulsion, the viscosity is basically defined or predefined by the choice of the emulsifier. It is the emulsifier that tells you which viscosity range you are going to have. Some emulsifiers create low viscosity emulsions like this one, and some emulsifiers by nature create thicker creams and emulsions and higher viscosity emulsions like this one. But even with a given emulsifier, you can slightly manipulate the viscosity range of your emulsions. And when you follow me to the computer and to the screen, I'm going to show you how it is possible and what you can do. To know how we can manipulate the viscosity, we first need to know what the viscosity is. In simple words, the viscosity is the resistance to flow. Just visually you can comprehend that water and glycerin and honey have different viscosities, so they flow differently. This is a very simple term for the viscosity. Viscosity is something measurable that you have devices that you can measure from. Very simple, just drop a fluid through a pipette and count the drops over the time, or a little bit more complicated instruments like you see here, but it is something measurable, although you can compare the viscosity of 2 or 3 different creams or fluids visually as well. So why the viscosity is so important for us? It defines the viscosity of the product that you are making, defines the manufacturing procedure and manufacturing machinery, your storage and pumping methods, your filling machinery, the packaging of the product, and the application mode. When you start creating a new concept and a new product, you usually have 2 approaches. You either have a certain packaging in mind and you want to adjust the viscosity to that certain packaging, and then go for the manufacturing machinery, storage methods, and pumping methods, and the filling machine. Or the other way, you want to have a certain viscosity and then go and select your machinery, packaging, and everything according to that. So one of these 2 approaches are usually when you are creating a new concept and a new product. Viscosity is the simplest term in a range of terms that concern the flow of the products. The more complicated terms are yield stress, thixotropy, and storage and loss modules, but we are not going to the depth of these concepts and terms. We just consider the viscosity for right now. Some emulsifiers by nature create medium range viscosity, some low range viscosity, even sprayable emulsions, and some create higher range viscosity. So it's the nature of the emulsifier that will tell you at the beginning which viscosity range you are going to have. But in that certain range, you can slightly manipulate and change the viscosity by several factors, and we are going to discuss them in this presentation in detail. Just a side note here, the higher viscosity does not always mean it is better. It is no better or worse when it comes to the viscosity. It depends really on the concept, on the application mode, on the packaging, which one you want. Sometimes you really want low viscosity emulsions or sprayable emulsions, but generally higher viscosity looks at least prettier on Instagram photos than the low viscosity emulsions. That is one. But high viscosity lotions and creams are basically more stable and are easier to make than the low viscosity emulsions. And it is always easier to increase the viscosity than to reduce the viscosity without compromising the stability of the emulsion. So keep that in mind, that there is no absolute better or worse, but here we are going to show you how you can manipulate and change the viscosity of a given emulsion. The skin feel, the flow of the product and how it distributes on your skin, on that certain skin part or body part, the tackiness of the formulation, the soapiness and dispensing method of the formulation, plus the scent. These are all factors that play a much more important role than the viscosity when it really comes to application of the product and how the consumer accepts your product. Viscosity has an impact on some of these factors, but not on all of these factors. So now assume that we have a certain emulsifier and we want to manipulate the viscosity in range of that certain emulsifier. One of the first factors that affects the viscosity and the stability is the procedure when it comes to emulsion making. In the large industry, they have certain mixers, and when they have a certain procedure, they automate it and they create batch after batch after batch. In an artisanal laboratory, usually we don't have this luxury, so you may grab different mixers that you stumble upon and want to compare them together. We have a long series of blog posts called Kitchen Meets Cosmetic Lab, where we have tested for you several kitchen mixers and stick blenders that usually the artisanal manufacturers and students start with, and compare the results in those series of blog posts. Here you see a few emulsions made with the lysolecithin and with different mixers that we have used, and you can easily observe the difference in color of these emulsions. The viscosity is not that obvious just visually, and here you can see the difference in the viscosity and the difference in the particle size. So depending on the mixers that we have used, one of them was the unfortunate Blendia, one of them was the Bamix, one of them was our homogenizer, so different mixers. You can go back to that blog post. But depending on the mixers, the particle size is quite different, and that is mirrored in the color of the emulsion, and obviously the viscosity is different. So it is here again not about which is better, which is worse, but you need to keep in mind that the method that you use for the emulsion making and homogenization has a huge impact on the particle size and on the stability and viscosity of the emulsion. So the first or easiest way to increase the viscosity of an emulsion is increasing the inner phase concentration. Each emulsifier again has a certain range of the oil concentration. Some of them work with 10 to 15%, some of them work better with up to 50%, some of them work at the lower range. So with each emulsifier, when you get the data sheet, the first thing you need to look is what is the oil percentage that emulsifier is happy with. So for an oil-in-water emulsion, the inner phase is the oil phase. So when you increase the oil phase concentration, the viscosity is slightly increased. For water in oil emulsion, the inner phase is water, so that when you increase the water phase content or reduce the oil phase content, the viscosity is slightly increased. Here we have an example for you. It was in a blog post a couple of weeks or months ago, and this is the certain emulsifier. We use the same frame formulation, just we increase the oil concentration. And this is an emulsifier, that is our polyalcohol, that works perfectly with a very low oil phase concentration from 1% up to 25-30%. So by increasing the oil phase, you see that the viscosity of the emulsion is increased. With swapping the oil, you usually don't have a huge impact on the viscosity unless you go to solid oils or butters, such as babassu oil that is solid in winter, or shea butter that is solid at room temperature. When you go to butters and soft butters, hard butters, then you have an impact on the viscosity. Otherwise, by swapping the oil, usually the change in the viscosity is not that obvious. By changing the polarity of the oil, you can slightly modify the viscosity or change the viscosity. It is not a general rule what the more polar oils do and what the less polar oils do, but they usually have an impact on the viscosity and sometimes even on the stability of the emulsion. It depends more on the emulsifier. But basically, let's say all of our plant oils are in the same polarity group and class. Then when we go to hydrocarbons such as our emo green, or to squalane, we have other polarities. When we go to ester oils, or like here, or lower chain triglycerides, we have another polarity group. So with changing the polarity, you can slightly manipulate the viscosity, and this is something that, depending on the emulsifier, you need to test. I couldn't find a general rule that lower polarity oils generally increase the viscosity and vice versa. So it really depends on the nature of the emulsifier. But just this is good to know and keep in the back of your mind that you can add oils of different polarities and see how they work in your formulation in terms of viscosity, skin feel, flow and stability. The gum plays a huge role in the viscosity and in the stability of the emulsion. And now with the popularity of the natural cosmetics, and specifically with the new rules about the microplastic, using the natural gums and hydrocolloids is increasing in emulsions and in personal care. So the nature of the gum plays a huge role in the viscosity range of your formulation. This is an example of a basic formulation, frame formulation. We have just changed the gum, or kept the basic gum and added additional gums, and you can see how the viscosity increases from a medium viscosity. You can see it in the picture as well. This is quite obvious. This is a medium viscosity emulsion, and here we have a richer, higher viscosity cream. Then the dispersion of the gum, the hydration of the gum, the temperature of the hydration plays a huge role again. Not for all of the gums. Some gums like Solagum AX are hydrated perfectly in cold water as well as in hot water. But for gums such as Sclerotium, Amigum or Taragum, it makes a huge difference if you disperse it cold or disperse it hot. So the mode of the gum dispersion, the instruments that you have, as well as the temperature of the gum, hydration plays a role in the viscosity of the emulsion as well. Then we have texture modifiers that when you add them to the emulsion, they can increase or decrease the viscosity, and they have an impact on the texture, on the skin feel, on the flow of the emulsion. One of them that we very often use is our modified rice starch, and you can see here it increases the viscosity, it improves the stability, it even improves the skin feel, it imparts a powdery dry skin feel. Other common viscosity modifiers with a huge impact on the viscosity and stability of the emulsion are fatty alcohols, for example, fatty acids. We have here cetyl alcohol. I haven't used any fatty acid here, but fatty acids usually can increase the viscosity. Stearic acid, myristic acid, palmitic acid, they can increase the viscosity. The longer chain fatty acids or the waxes that are solid at room temperature, they can increase the viscosity. But you need to keep in mind that again here increasing the viscosity sometimes may have a negative impact on the flow and the skin feel, so you don't want to overdose your waxes or fatty alcohols. Specifically cetyl alcohol may cause a kind of soapiness over the skin, so here again you need to play around with the concentrations to come to the optimum concentration that you have the desired viscosity, the desired skin feel, flow and stability. Another viscosity modifier that we use and have shared the results of our experiments with you is the glyceryl dibehene G2B. It hugely increases the viscosity and it imparts a very nice texture and appearance, but it has a negative impact on the flow of the emulsion. So when you apply it at around 4%, the appearance of the emulsion is really very pretty, very attractive. The viscosity is high, the stability is improved, but when you apply the emulsion over the skin, it doesn't flow as smoothly as when it flows without that ingredient. So here again, when we want to use this ingredient to increase the viscosity and to improve the stability, we then play with the polarity of the oils so that we come to an optimum point where the viscosity is high, but the flow and the skin feel of the emulsion is still very pleasant. So these are the factors that you need to keep in mind as a formulator. Not always increasing the viscosity is the optimum solution or is the best solution, but when you increase the viscosity, you don't want to have a negative impact on the skin feel and on the flow of the formulation. Having said that all, I hope and wish that all of your emulsions may remain stable and nice and smooth as you want, but for that you need obviously patience and lots of experience. Thanks for being with me, and if you have other questions, just drop them in the comments and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Or if you have any suggestion, want me to have any presentation about a specific theme for you, just drop that in the comments. See you soon. Bye.